I'm Mike Netzer with datacenterHawk, and today I'm joined by Dennis Strieter and Vlad Gulkarov with Hyper Solutions. We're talking about the data center industry next. Well, guys, thanks for coming up to Dallas to sit with us today. Good to meet you guys both in person, and look forward to talking about the space with you today.
Us too. Thanks for having us. Joy to be here.
Wonderful to be here.
So let's just talk about from the beginning, how'd you all both get into the data center industry? And then I'd love to talk about how Hyper Solutions came to be and how that founding came about.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So my beginnings are very humble. I went to San Diego State, graduated with an electrical engineering degree, and actually got pulled into the data center industry by my mother, believe it or not, into a high performance computing business in San Diego called Ferrari.
Okay.
Yeah, she brought me in. She was the procurement supply chain specialist over there, and said, my kid needs a job. And I got a job in engineering and stayed there for a couple of years doing some pretty exciting stuff. Cool. Developing HPC clusters and then data center containers, right? Kind of an all-in-one solution. And this is back in 2007, 8, 9, right? So very exciting times back then.
Some of those,
some of the technology that was rolling out. And from there, once they ran out of runway, transitioned into PDI, right? Which later got acquired multiple times and landed in its final destination with Eaton Corp.
Okay.
So yeah, spent quite a bit of time in this space doing many different things.
Like most of us probably didn't set out to go, I'm doing data centers, but just kind of were drawn to it.
Specialized in power and engineering, didn't think this is where I'd end up, but here we all are. So
here
it's
we
a
all
wonderful,
are.
Wonderful place.
Great background.
Yeah. So my story begins in a galaxy a long time ago, far, far away, right? I came into the data center industry by taking a job as an office manager for a manufacturer's rep company that sold products into the data center industry. And that owner brought me on to help them digitize their business in 1999. Okay. So if you recall what was going on in the data center industry, that was when the .com turned into a .bomb. Mm-hmm. And in 2000, nothing was built and nothing got bought. Right? So that was my foray into the market. And I went out and had to learn that business and understand what generates all this paper that we need to digitize it. And by the end of that first year, I was the company's top salesperson.
You were not dismayed by the .com.
I was not afraid, right? And I saw that technology might have to put a pause and cycles come to start and end, but there's always a new cycle that's going to start up and we're going to need to be there to serve the needs of that new technology ramp, right? Sure. So for 25 years, I've been selling equipment into the data center space and helping the world's largest data centers build their properties.
Yeah, and that's been, you've seen a lot of those cycles from run up to 07, 08, run down, run back up, probably coming into 19, 20, 21, which kind of dovetails into the founding of Hyper Solutions. So how did you two meet, first of all, and how did that become a company in 2021, 2020? 2022, okay.
Yeah, so I was the engineering manager when I started with PDI. I ran all development for transformers and PDUs, RBPs, overhead busway, pretty much the full portfolio we had back then. And Dennis was my client, right? And so Dennis had some very specific requirements for his particular client's needs. And I was there to make sure that we fulfilled them in every way we could possibly do, because Dennis has very high expectations.
Very high expectations.
And so does his clients. And so that's where we kind of first met. I want to kind of peg it around 2011 maybe. Probably feels about right. So it's been quite a while, and ever since then we've developed a relationship, one that's built on understanding of technology and trust, right? And how do we go and deliver and serve the clients best? Sure. We didn't always agree.
Sure. Well, if two people always agree in business, right? One's redundant. So
right. Yeah, that's right. So what are you paying the other guy for? Just to say yes with you? And I'd like to take that a little further, right? I've always represented the demand side of the equation. I look at everything through the customer lens and what they need to be successful with their business model, whatever that might be, whether they're a colo or an enterprise or an AI foundry. I have to enable their success with the equipment that I provide, right? Vlad always represented the supply side, right? He was the one at a manufacturer supplying that. So he and I had to come together to forge the right path for the customers when the products in the market weren't what the clients needed. Sure. Now that's hard to do when he was an employee in a big corporation, right? Totally. They have their own thoughts and proclivities of what the future of the market is, and they might not agree with what your client's telling you today. Yeah. That didn't work for us. And then comes COVID.
I was going to say that was maybe in retrospect a fortuitous event. I hate to say it, but
it's been great for me.
It's been good for a lot of businesses. So talk about how you started the premise of the company.
That's right.
You've said in past conversations you're like the Airbnb of manufacturing. specifically for data center equipment. So I'd love for you to kind of expound on that, because I think it's a fascinating concept.
Thank you. And before I get to the network effect that we've applied to hyper and manufacturing in general, I want to talk about what COVID really brought to light in the market, right? Sure. I was going from a product price that was, this $50,000, and then 2 years later, it was $150,000. And the product quality was going down because everything was rushed to get out the door. And then I couldn't get the product because COVID showed us shortages in rosin for breakers and foil for transformers, right? And we went and we uncovered and dug under the sheets, and we found out that the components were not in short supply, but the manufacturing space where you take those components and you bend the sheet metal and you connect them with bus bars, that was the space that was missing. And that is precisely when we reconnected. Yeah. And I said, Vlad, I'm staring at this huge demand curve from my clients. They're giving me 2-year forecasts that are bigger than anything we've ever seen. Yeah. And everyone's telling me it's 3 years, get in line. Mm-hmm. We can't serve customers like that. No. They're not going to wait. Microsoft's not going to wait. Google's not going to wait. They're going to get their gear. So we reconnected, and I said, Vlad, these are the challenges I'm facing from the demand side right now. What do you think? And he said, I've got the model that can fix this. Sure. And then we agreed on that first phone call, let's start Hyper Solutions. And within a week, we were formed and incorporated in April of 2022.
2022, okay.
So that's
so COVID was kind of the catalyst, and then obviously it takes time to get your
you
ducks in a
saw
row.
that happen and everything back up, and it just became so horrible. It was so untenable for my clients that I was sitting at my desk, rubbing my head going, I've got to call a client that I've had for 18 years and tell them I can't help them with this piece of their one line anymore. Yeah. I can't live with myself.
We want to do what's right by our customers. We want to serve. That's a great way to see it. And it's frustrating when you can't. Your hands are just tied.
So we had to take that into our own hands, and that's exactly what we did. Sure. And now we can talk about what we've done at Hyper. So when we look at manufacturing, it's really about the final goods assembly area, right?
When you think of supply chain as a whole, the critical kind of linchpin of supply chain is actually the assembly. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
That all comes together. And if you go look at a traditional manufacturer, you'll go peel the roof off a plant. You'll see a powder coating station. You'll see a sheet metal station. You'll see a welding station. Then you'll see dip tanks. And you'll see all these individual things that once that building runs out of capacity, if I want more capacity, I got to build another building with all that stuff in it, in a market where I'm not sure how sustained that future demand is. Yeah. And that might cost me $50 million of investment. Do you know how hard it is to go get $50 million to build a factory when you can't tell the person with the money exactly how long this new runway is?
Unfortunately, I have been learning how hard that is to get funds acquired. So yeah.
So for us, it really became about, okay, if you look at that 400,000 square foot plant, they've got 10,000 square foot of final assembly. That's their limiting factor. They can have breakers on pallets and transformers to the moon, but if they don't have anybody to put it together at the end, everything stops. Yeah. And that's the piece that we solve by applying the network effect, as other businesses have done. Uber is a good example. Yeah. Airbnb is another one. NetJets is another one, right? Who use distributed resources to fulfill a capacity need. Mm-hmm. By everyone doing a little bit of the total, I can do it much faster than anyone else can in a traditional factory.
With better repeatability and higher quality, because you can control all of that.
Yeah. So you look back. So from 2020 to now, basically, you're seeing just a massive uptick in activity, in leasing, and new development, new construction in North America. Everybody sees that. So and on top of that, you've seen the increased kind of scale of some of these developments, where 30, 40, 50 megawatts used to be a big building.
Big chunks.
And now 8 megawatts.
Yes, and now it's hundreds up to gigawatts. How does that impact what you guys are trying to do? If it used to be we need this many generators, now it's 5x, it's 10x that. It sounds like you're built to scale, but does that bring any unique challenges to the process when you're looking at these 500 megawatt requirements?
I think it really goes back to the way we think at our core. We're an engineering company, right? We look at the products that are used in this market and we dissect them into logical subcomponents. Hey, every PDU, as an example, it has a control panel, right? It has an input section, it has a transformation section, and then it has a distribution section. I can build those 4 sections independent of each other and bring it together on a final assembly line to move faster. So as an example, I have one factory that all it builds is the control panels for every piece of equipment that Hyper makes. They send out pallets of pre-configured control panels to my assembly plants to fashion into the final goods. That way, I don't have to have point-to-point wiring people in every one of my factories, because those people are hard to find and duplicate. Yeah. So I focus that production in one factory to supply the rest of my ecosystem.
It's scale and engineering. And if you engineer it properly, you have the documentation sets complete, you could scale that out and repeat it over and over again at multiple sites in multiple locations, right? And you could replicate this model. That's what we've done in this network.
Yeah, that seems like the secret sauce of what y'all are doing is the coordination of all the pieces, then the design to make sure that it can be implemented, consistently by maybe different types of operators across the board.
That's right. Yeah. Quality is the first thing that we have to do because we're in the mission critical space. Yep. People in this space care about the components that are in their products, right? You know that there's big standardization efforts where a big hyperscaler might say, we only use this brand of meter across their entire enterprise. We as the manufacturer have to rise to that and dovetail into their specific choices. We can do that with our model because of its distributed nature. The other thing I love doing is we'll take a factory witness test and a customer's there coming to view our product and test it before they accept it. And we'll have 3 different PDUs that all look identical that they don't realize have come from 3 different factories of ours. And they can't tell the difference. And I'm not talking about just where the screws are or the finish of the paint. I'm talking about where the zip ties were placed that tie the wires back to the control panel. Yeah. Across multiple factories, they're all in exactly the same spot because we engineered it properly and wrote those manufacturing instructions to where I could have you come into one of our factories and be producing for us by the end.
So maybe you guys are more like the IKEA of data center manufacturing equipment.
There's a little bit to that. Yeah,
you got some little drawings that help call us.
We talk about it as the Lego set, but
sure, Lego says IKEA's. But the point is, it's no small amount of work to just to do the documentation piece and get people from different backgrounds. I mean, that makes me nervous hearing you describe it because I get 3 things in from 3 people. I feel like to make sure that the quality is consistent, I think is like a huge lift. So one of the things we talked about in kind of our pre-call was like some of the timelines. So, stuff that was 4 to 6, 8 weeks pre-COVID, then went up to 50 to 60, 80, 120 weeks. Where have you seen that come back down? If you look at kind of like the state of the industry as a whole, in addition to what you all are doing to bring down some of those supply chain times, where do you see like those supply chain issues generally sorting out?
I think the industry's done a really good job on recovering on the component side, right? And we're seeing ample availability of breakers, right? There's clearly a lot of magnetics out there now and other metering solutions that are just available, right? You don't have to wait in line to get a lot of this stuff. The challenges continue in the finished goods assembly, right? Sure. And so you hear announcements all the time, right? One of these large OEMs is introducing another 500,000 square feet, another 300,000 square feet in order to support the finished goods assembly of switchboards and other types of gear. And I think that's where you're still going to have continued issues. And you're seeing a lot of pop-ups. There's a lot of new entrants into this market, right, that are trying to take advantage of the opportunities, and good for them, right? We applaud them for making that attempt. But that's not scalable also. And so one of the things we talk about all the time actually is as soon as you go and produce 4 walls, those 4 walls immediately dictate your capacity.
100%.
Right? Yeah. And so we leverage our model to not have 4 walls, or at least the walls continue to scale outward so we can go and scale to support the customer's needs. So from a component side, we think there's been a ton of recovery over the last couple of years, primarily in the last 2 years. But on the manufacturing finished goods assembly side, there's still challenges to come, right? Yeah. At least in the non-hyper approach.
Sure. Yeah, your audience is out there shaking their head going, yeah, because they're still getting quoted 34 months lead time on things, right? Yeah. For switchgear. You want a 5,000 amp piece of switchgear? Good luck, buddy. Yeah. Right? And the problem with this is not just that the big manufacturers don't have the space to do it, but they're taking orders from internet giants that are in the multiple billions of dollars. Sure. Yeah. So if I'm a hospital and I need 3 5,000 amp pieces of switchboard, I got to get behind Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta with their multi-billion-dollar orders that they're building all factories for. Yeah. That doesn't work. And again, Hyper's not here to serve those onesie twosies. And again, that's where our model picks up. Where our model doesn't work is if you need one thing. Yeah. Because for us to do, as you correctly pointed out, all that engineering work, all those manufacturing instructions, there's got to be some scale for us to go build at the end of that, or else we never recoup all those costs in that time. So unfortunately, we're not someone that if you're a local state farm data center that needs 200-300 kVA PDUs, we can't really help you with that.
Yeah.
But if you need 200, we're the only people that can help you with that, because we can get them when you need them.
That's a great place to be.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we have to live in scale because we've designed the entire organization around scale.
And I think very similar to what's going on in other parts of the industry, where you talk about the hyperscalers getting a lot of the attention, where the enterprise customers at 3 to 5, 6 megawatt banks and hospitals have not been getting a lot of love. So, and that makes sense again, but I understand why it is, but it's a challenge that the industry's gonna have to reckon with. As you guys think about kind of what's next, both for your company as a whole, across the industry, we're seeing, as we talked about, the increased scale, the I'll call it rapidly changing design around density, liquid cooling, all that stuff. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts around kind of the next 2, 3, 4 years for your company as a whole and the industry generally?
You really just pitched me a softball there, right? Because I just told you I've been in the business 25 years. And most of those 25 years, I've been helping operators get water out of their data center.
Yeah.
And get it as far away from the equipment as we can. And for the next 25, I'm going to be helping them dig trenches to bring water back into the data center.
The world's turned upside down, right? It used to be, we don't want to be anywhere near a nuclear facility because it could melt down. And now it's like, hey, what, is that a nuclear facility over? We'll be right there.
3 Mile Island.
It's like,
I know.
So
it's crazy.
But what's great and exciting for manufacturers like us who love to innovate because we understand the market dynamics of why people need to do this. Well, now that we're going to have ultra reliable mechanical systems feeding water directly to the chip, it's our responsibility as a manufacturer to figure out how to use that water to cool our process too, so that we can then make things smaller and miniaturize them. Right? The reason why we're moving to air cooling or away from air cooling is water is 1,700 times more effective at removing heat. Are you telling me that then I can't use that process water to, I don't know, cool down a PDU or a transformer or something like that? Of course I'm going to. And since now they're a critical part of the data center's operating system, they'll see that as a good use for that water, because if the water isn't going to the chips have to shut off. Yep. And it's not 5 minutes later, it's now. So again, they're going to rush to design these 2N+1, very resilient, highly available mechanical systems to deliver this processed water right down to the chip. We're going to have to tap into that to miniaturize our electrical distribution gear as well.
Got it.
Right? I mean, you've seen a transformer that's a megawatt, right?
Yeah.
It's big. It's bigger than the 3 of us sitting here. Big boys, right? Well, if I've got a client doing 500 kilowatts and a 20-foot tall AI rack, you think they're going to want to buy a 60 by 60 PDU for every 2 racks they deploy? Doesn't make sense. We've got to miniaturize that. Well, why do we have all that space? Well, we need cooling, we need convection, we need air to flow through it. What if I could use that processed water and interject that into my system somehow, and now everything gets smaller?
Sure.
That's what I see as the future, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah.
We're here for it.
Sure.
Yeah, the key is innovation, right? You got to continue to innovate. I think if we just look on the industry and say, well, power's always been power, it's 100 years old, transformers have never changed, I think we won't be able to go and advance and improve the space that's scaling aggressively. So you have to innovate. So that's a key component of it. How we innovate, I think, is the next step, right? It's the idea of we got to close couple things. Do I need to have all of these breakers and all these protective devices distributed across this large data center? Now we're talking about hundreds of thousands of square feet, but I have protection here and I have protection downstream of it. How do we find opportunities to close couple things? How do we reduce waste? How do we improve better consumption of breakers and less of them potentially, right? How do we leverage potential water in the area, right, in order to make things more dense, right, and reduce the white space requirements in order to power the same amount of output. So it's about innovating with the capabilities that we see ahead. And nuclear is an interesting conversation. And there's a whole story, there's a whole podcast we could do on nuclear.
Easily.
But what happens to gensets if I have 3 modular nuclear devices that I can park outside, right? Those are new innovations that talk about, well, what's the redundancy in the genset needs? There is a lot of change coming. It's going to come fast at us. And the next 5 years is going to be exciting, and we're going to be right at the front of it.
And I think this speaks to the maturation of the data center industry as a whole. Again, I can go back 25 years, and at that time, there wasn't enough consumption of specific products so that you could have an industry stood up to support that vertical. We were using the same switchboards you'd put in a hospital. We just configured them different and put them in a data center, right? Well, now that the velocity and the scale of data resources that we use, because we've got AI, which is the big one no one saw, we've got cloud colo, which is still, I think, only 15% of all enterprise data has been transferred into cloud and colo, so they've got a long runway. Our industry now is big enough to support dedicated research development on products made to serve that industry only. It doesn't have to work in a hospital. It can be just made for
We're no
data
longer a
center.
niche. I can announce as of October 29th, 2024, data center no longer niche.
But that's what can drive this innovation. And that's what's going to drive our clients to say, what can you build for me?
Sure.
We need something that does this, this, and this, and we need 10,000 of them. Well, first, let's engineer what this, and this are. Let's get the features in that you want and not the ones that are non-accretive to you. And then let's engineer it to scale. That's what Hyper does.
That's one of I've only been in the space 5 years. Some people, a very short time to others, like you all in this room, and the opportunities there and the kind of the dynamic nature of this space has been really, really fun to be a part of. You guys have got an even longer view on that time, but just to see what y'all are doing has been
exciting. Yeah, we're having a great time, and most importantly, we're serving our clients.
Absolutely.
We're
And
filling
that to
a
us is-
huge need,
Yeah.
right? And it's not just the delivery of the quality components, but it's the timeline.
That's one of the key
Building trust at scale, as we like to
That's
call
what
it.
we do.
Trust at scale. I like that. I'm gonna borrow that.
You can borrow it, but you can't have it because it's trademark.
It's,
Yeah,
on,
that's right.
it's on your coin.
Is it actually
so-
trademarked?
It is on your challenge.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
Building trust at scale. And we do that through a variety of ways. And one of the stories I like to share with how we help clients succeed is that when an IG goes out to bid on their outsourced data resources, the colo stuff, right? They go out to the whole market and they're talking to all the names that we know, the streams, the QTSs, the switches, all of them, right? All of those people are responding to RFPs and they're going to give a date back as to when they can turn those completed buildings, whether it's this 20 megawatt sector or this 100 megawatt building. Our clients can go in and deliver the building up to 9 months sooner than anybody else because we figured out that piece of the supply chain for them. And if you think speed to market doesn't matter, I don't know what to tell you.
If you know what
right?
the price per kilowatt per month on a 100 megawatt lease times 9 months, that's
There's real value there.
real money.
And when you look at the LDs that these IGs come with, a common one I've heard is for every 1 day you're late in turning over the building, we get 10 days of free colo. So that means 3 days of late on the construction side, which is 30 companies and hundreds of people and all these electricians doing this. 3 days late, they get a free month.
Yeah.
Well, guess what a monthly contract on a 100 megawatt building is? $8 to $10 million for being 3 days late.
It's a penalty.
We can't be late ever. And that's why we engineer the system to do this.
Yeah.
That's what resonates with the clients.
Yep, I get it. Time is money. Well, guys, hey, super thank you for coming by and sharing. It's great to have you guys here in person.
So be here.
We'll catch up with you guys soon, but if you want more information, it's hypersolutions.com, and more information on the data center space is datacenterhawk.com. See you all next time.